The shootings in Atlanta and Boulder are part of a specific category of violence that experts had hoped we had left behind during the pandemic. There were only 2 public mass killings of strangers in 2020, both before major lockdowns. That's down from 9 in 2019 and 10 in 2018, according to an Associated Press study. The pandemic seems to have slowed these shootings down. And that makes sense, because FBI data found that most such attacks happen in places that we have not been gathering during the outbreak. And with that slowdown came another effect. Criminologists have shown that one shooting often inspires another as the perpetrators strive for notoriety. The pandemic seems to have broken that cycle for a while. But don't be misled. The narrow way that some define public mass shootings obscures the fact that 2020 saw an incredible uptick in gun violence. In fact, if we define mass shootings instead as 4 or more people injured but not necessarily killed, 2020 had the most mass shootings in years. Comparing countries can be difficult when we're talking about mass shootings because one event in a small country can skew the data. But even when you look at large continent-sized populations, the U.S. still stands alone on this issue. What sets the U.S. apart? Well, the big factor is gun ownership. The estimate is that as of 2017, Americans already owned nearly half of civilian guns in the world. Then, in 2020, Americans bought a record 23 million guns. That's a 65% increase over the prior 2 years. What about mental illness? The stereotype is a madman with a gun, but the reality is likely much more complex. One study found that fewer than 5% of people killing others with a gun had been diagnosed with a mental illness. An FBI study found that most shooters had struggled with their mental health in some way, but that most shooters also had an average of at least 3 separate stressors in their lives, from financial strain to conflicts at work or school. But it's hard to study this stuff. There is no national registry of gun ownership, for instance. And for 20 years, Congress effectively prevented federal agencies like the CDC and National Institutes of Health from meaningfully studying gun violence. They do have new power to do it now, as of 2019. And several national studies are underway. For now, as we emerge from the pandemic and resume something like normal life, the question here is whether we're going back to this terrible brand of normal as well.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.